There is always an appointed acting Prime Minister who indeed has made himself available. And we've seen Richard Marles, when he was in that role just 24 hours ago, engaging with New South Wales emergency response. So these things all work together. And in terms of...
It's a protection racket. That's why you're doing it. You're protecting a clearly inept and unprepared Prime Minister. That's what it is.
We were acting. We are not a one-person show. I was fulfilling a responsibility that I believe that I had of travelling to Ukraine. To compare that with a holiday is, I just find, beyond contempt, frankly. And it says a lot about the people who made those comments. And I thank Premier Perrottet for his response when asked about it. That's what people want to see. People want to see people working together in the national interest.
And I know in some quarters the Prime Minister has been criticised for being away. What I would say is, from my perspective, the federal government needs to balance international concerns and domestic concerns. But as soon as he could, he picked up the phone to call me.
But I have said that I don't think his focus has been in the right place. It's not so much where Mr Albanese has been, it's his focus on everyday problems for Australians. We've got huge problems in this country with interest rates going up, inflation, cost of living very hard for people, an energy crisis on our hands, and Mr Albanese has just been handed off. He has just not been hands-on in tackling these major countries facing our nation. Now, in saying that, I thought the trip to Paris was surplus to requirements, as you say. I mean, it basically seemed to be a continuation of Mr Albanese's election campaign slaying match with the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. That just seemed pointless, particularly given Emmanuel Macron was in Madrid for the separate NATO meeting. He could have caught up with him there rather than go to Paris as well. But look, that's not the principal issue here. The principal issue is not the Prime Minister's location. Yeah. It is the fact that he's absent-minded and not focused on domestic issues. He's also taken this ridiculous stance, Greg, that while he's overseas, he won't comment on domestic matters. Yeah. I mean, does he not have email or contact with people back home to understand what's going on in this country? Because that would be a real concern, I think, to most Australians if that's true.
I'm certainly keen to explore that because it's an interesting reversion to something that I think was adopted by Prime Ministers of yesteryear. But Patrick Gorman, to you, we're just picking up this line of criticism. Is there any sense in which the Prime Minister might need to check his travel plans into the future? Is it an easy trap to fall into to just accept one too many invitations?
Some on the coalition side are talking as if the Prime Minister's been having pina coladas and playing the ukulele on a beach somewhere. I mean, it's ridiculous. He was at the NATO meeting, the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation meeting, which Australia had been invited to, discussing Australia's vital national interests, following which he was in Paris and then in a war zone. And if this is the maturity of the debate, I think the Australian people deserve a lot better than that. And I think it's also diminishing the role of government. What we know is that government is not one person, it is a team. The Prime Minister has said that very clearly. There was an acting Prime Minister. Now, maybe under previous governments, people haven't had as much faith in their deputy, and maybe that was the case under the former government. But I think we need to be a bit more mature about this and a bit more mature about prosecuting Australia's interests, both at home and abroad.